It is a cold day in the Carolinas, and the sky is crying rain. We have gathered at the gleaming Calvary Church in South Charlotte, in many ways a great distance from the small St. Mark's in Mooresville, where the Earnhardt family spent yesterday to say their goodbyes. 6,200 seats are filling with Dale's NASCAR family. Hello and welcome to a celebration of the life of Dale Earnhardt. I'm Mike Joy, joined by Ken Squire. This service was organized by Dale's family and close associates, so that Dale's extended family, his NASCAR family, can share and achieve closure. Moved by the spontaneous outpouring of emotional fans, the homemade memorials, and the constant stream of saddened supporters past Dale Earnhardt Inc. in Mooresville, the family has agreed to this one-time live telecast of this service because the Earnhardts also wanted to reach out to Dale's many grieving fans to help you achieve closure and offer you a glimpse of this memorial.
This is going to be a little different than what television coverage usually provides. The family agreed to allow our electronic neighborhood in for this special program, so there's no fancy camera angles, no tight close-ups. We are simply part of a caring congregation that's gathered here, gathered wherever people want to take a moment or two today to remember Dale Earnhardt. It is a large, loving congregation that, as we have discovered in the past 2 or 3 days, seemingly knows no boundaries whatsoever. Let me review with you how the service will be conducted today. In this first hour, here in the studio, we're going to be providing our tribute to Dale. And then we're going into the sanctuary, and at the pulpit from Motor Racing Outreach, the Reverend Dale Beavers will be taking over. And we'll follow the service with him until its conclusion, and perhaps be back after that at 1 o'clock with some closing thoughts here, perhaps a guest, we'll see.
Let's begin with a look at the man that you knew and loved from the grandstand and from your television set, the crusty, ornery, hard-driving Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt was born to stock car racing in Kannapolis, North Carolina in 1951. His father, Ralph, was a take-no-prisoners driver, the 56 NASCAR Sportsman Division champion. He earned the nickname Ironheart. Their relationship was forged working on Ralph's race car. Ralph died in 1973 while working on that car, and for Dale, his father's sport wasn't just a way of life, it was life. When Earnhardt took to the racetracks of North Carolina's Piedmont region, his natural talent was raw and unrefined. When he arrived on the Winston Cup circuit full-time in '79, he reveled in his ability to ruffle the feathers of the established superstars. Earnhardt took a sport that was accustomed to a king and introduced it to an intimidator. Driving for Rod Osterlund in 1980, Earnhardt became the first driver to win Rookie of the Year and the Winston Cup in back-to-back seasons. After a stint with legendary owner Bud Moore, Earnhardt signed on with former independent driver Richard Childress. In 1984 and 85, Ironhead created more wrecks than wins, but a dynasty was in the making. From 1986 to 94, Earnhardt and Childress won 6 Winston Cups and 48 races. They won on short tracks, super speedways, and the Flying Aces were the best pit crew in the history of the sport. Their way was rough and tumble, get your hands dirty racing. It left competitors mad, fans thrilled, and it made them rich. The Man in Black developed a fan following the sport had never seen. He copyrighted his signature and his name and earned more in annual souvenir sales than the rest of the garage area combined. His career crossed 4 decades, taking on the best of each racing generation. Petty, Pearson, Yarborough, Wallace, Elliott, Gordon. He beat them all. But Earnhardt's Achilles heel was always the Daytona 500. In 1990, he came within 1 mile of victory. He'd won more races than anyone in the history of the big speedway, but never the 500. Until 1998, on his 20th try, the sport's biggest star finally took the sport's biggest prize. Injuries and distractions, though, had taken their toll and affected the Intimidator's winning ways. After Daytona, he didn't win again for nearly 2 seasons. But the arrival of Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the Winston Cup scene breathed new life into Dale's career. He won 3 races in '99, 2 in 2000, and succeeded as car owner, first with his son, then with former modified driver Steve Park, and last weekend with his newest hire, Michael Waltrip. This season, he'd already spoken of a record-breaking 8th title, laughed off talk of age, and came to Daytona in the best health of his life. 3 weeks ago, he and Junior placed 4th in the 24 Hours of Daytona, their first ever sports car race. On Friday, his amazing save in the International Race of Champions, along with classic Earnhardt retaliation afterward, had fans on their feet again. But on Sunday, almost within sight of the victory lane he had visited more times than any other driver, those fans were silenced. Dale Earnhardt was 49 years old.
We know that he won 76 Winston Cup races, hundreds of others. We know he won 7 championships, won 34 races at Daytona. But who was Dale Earnhardt, and what was that mysterious something that made him so special to so many? We'll look into that some in this hour before we go to the nave of Calvary Church and join the service today. One thing for sure, he was a complex guy. He liked a whole lot of different things, liked all kinds of music. Never will forget when he introduced us one night to Delbert McClinton, and Alabama was another favorite. And there were at least another half dozen that were right on the top of his list.
T. Graham Brown, Brooks and Dunn.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
Jimmy Buffett came to Charlotte this Tuesday night. And I think, like many, all across America, Buffett followed Earnhardt and was influenced by what he had seen. There's a song that Buffett rarely does in concert. And as the strains opened of Take Another Road, images of Earnhardt filled the big screen. There's a verse in that song, Follow the Equator, like the old articulator, which Buffett changed to Intimidator. That song's about all you've heard on Charlotte radio these past couple of days. I'd like you to gather your thoughts as you listen to the words.
Fade away like bison, headed for the jungle. The cowboy can't endure. Never look back, that's what he swore. I'll take my pony to the shore. Somewhere, disappear without a trace. Take another road to another time. On another road in another time, like a novel from the five and dime. Take another road.
one thing about Earnhardt. Every stock car fan knew his number, knew his car. Kids knew his number before they could count. And everybody knew where he was on the racetrack. We'd get letters at CBS and now at Fox and at all the networks. You show too much Earnhardt. You're always on Earnhardt. Why are you always showing Earnhardt? Because everyone cared where he was. His fans cared, of course. And he had more fans, arguably, than anyone on the racetrack. But his detractors cared also, because wherever their favorite driver was, how soon before Earnhardt caught up to him? He once said, in response to the cacophony of boos that accompanied the cheers when he was introduced, and he got more of both than anyone, louder cheers and louder boos, did it bother him? And he said, if I ever walk up there and don't get any response, that'll bother me.
Yeah, one of the fans was quoted in one of the Florida papers as saying, I cheered when he crashed, I cried when he died. He touched people in a strange way. There was a quote from another kid that said, I liked him because he didn't put on airs. He was just a country boy. I've always thought that part of the magic of Dale Earnhardt was that he was the common man who did uncommon things. He was everybody who ever had a dream, but he was the one with the focus and the concentration and the strength to live out his dream and take it to the greatest heights. And I think that's what a lot of racing people have trouble with, because they have lost their dream when they've lost this fellow Dale Earnhardt.
And I think that's in many ways why he appealed so much to the collar man, the fellow who punches a time card and goes out to a working wage, because that was him. That's his dream. Dale Earnhardt came from humble beginnings and made so much of himself that everyone who drives a pickup with that little number 3 decal in the back window said, boy, that's the kind of guy I wish I could have been, and maybe I could have been, but since I'm here, I'm going to pull for Dale Earnhardt. He's my kind of guy.
Yeah, and he was the kind of guy, it was that John Wayne character that wasn't a fictitious character on the screen. This was for real. You pull your belts down tight. You get your eyes as big as silver dollars, and you go for it, was one of his great lines about it. And that's exactly what he did. You know, Kyle Petty, years ago, had such fun with many of the drivers, and he compared them all to animals. And so we got to Earnhardt, and he said, well, Earnhardt, he could be an armadillo. He comes armor-plated. And then he thought for a moment, he said, no, Earnhardt, he'd be a grizzly bear. Not one of those fake stuffed bears in the store. I mean, he would be a real grizzly bear. Indeed, he was. But he was a complex person. Yeah, he was that on the racetrack. That's where that intimidator came thing. And it was part of his, it was hereditary with him. It was not given to him. That was not a manner-born title. It was in his genes to race. That's what his father did. That's what he followed along with. That's where his friends were. That's the only thing he ever wanted to do in his whole life.
And we'll expand on that later in this hour as we talk about Dale Earnhardt, the fan favorite, and Dale Earnhardt, the person and family man. The 6,200-seat Calvary Church is right now filling with well-wishers. Included are the Earnhardt family, 13 busloads of Dale Earnhardt Incorporated employees, 15 busloads of Richard Childress Racing employees driven down from Welcome, North Carolina, representatives of NASCAR, of series sponsor R.J. Reynolds, close friends, associate sponsors, licensees, and other people who were involved with the Earnhardt magic and mystique. Earnhardt the racer, another great racer, Darrell Waltrip, sat down with him just a Tuesday ago in Daytona to talk to Dale Earnhardt about his racing.
Your first race car. I mean, all I ever heard was that pink thing. I thought your first race car I ever saw was that old ugly number 8 car that you raced on dirt.
It was pretty as a beige gold.
It was look about like my first race car.
Well, honestly, it was my brother-in-law's race car, and he didn't drive it. He drove for another guy, and he just parked his old car, and I talked to his dad into letting me drive that car, and it was a pink 56 Ford.
Had you ever driven before?
I never drove before. My dad
But you'd been with your dad?
I grew up racing and talked to my dad about racing, but he never would let me drive. So I drove this car, and I started running pretty good in it, and before long, David quit driving his car, the car he's driving for, and wanted to drive his car again, so it put me out of a ride. And I was pretty distraught about that. I was really dejected, let down. And I came home from work one day, and my dad says, and there was an old race car sitting in the driveway there, and my dad told me, he said, that's James Miller's car out there. And he's brought it over, said, let's me and you go through it and check it over good and set it up, and then he's going to let you run his old car. So my dad actually got me a ride after he seen I was going to race. I reckon he figured, well, I better get him something that he's halfway safe. But that's the reason my dad had the car was make sure it was safe.
When you won the Daytona 500, and man,
Finally.
I couldn't believe you won it. Golly, that's the only thing
I would.
I kept holding on to that one thing. I said, if he just doesn't ever win the 500, I got that anyway. But having come so close, I mean, I don't really care about the times you won it. The time you were in 90, when you had the thing won, I mean, you were looking.
Cut a tire down, run out of gas. I've been in every situation you had to lose a race, and it's just, I mean, when I cut the tire down, I couldn't believe it. I drove around the racetrack and came in the garage, and I just sat in the car. I just couldn't believe it because we had such a dominant car. And you've been in those kind of races. All of us have. And but it was just a tremendous feeling to win it after so many years of defeat or bad luck, and win so many races at Daytona. I've won all the races at Daytona except 24 hours. I came second in my class in it, but it's a unique racetrack. It's a unique place. It's a magical place.
20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration. Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500. Finally, every man on every crew has come out to the edge of pit lane to congratulate.
The Daytona 500 is ours. We've won it, we've won it, we've won it.
Ken, you were in victory lane that day.
Yeah, gosh, when he won Daytona, he stood in victory lane, and he thanked everyone. He thanked the Lord. He thanked his father, Ralph Earnhardt. He thanked T. Wayne Robertson. He thanked his old sidekick, Neil Bonnet. He thanked everybody, he said, that had touched his life and helped him get where he was. And then he said something that was so un-Earnhardt. He said, you know, as I came out of the fourth turn, I cried a little bit in the race car. And then he thought what he said and said, well, I didn't cry. My eyes just watered up.
Of course. Usually, at the conclusion of a race like that, the network would cut away to commercial before joining you in victory lane.
Yeah.
And Jim Cornell, our associate director, sensed that something was happening. Didn't know quite what. And I about lost it to see that entire pit road just lined with people that 2 minutes before were trying their best to beat him. Now, fully cognizant of what he had accomplished after so many years of coming so close so many times, that receiving line that formed up along the pit lane was something like I have never seen in a quarter century of covering this sport. Just such a genuine outpouring of emotion and relief that Dale Earnhardt had finally achieved the one goal in this sport that had eluded him.
We're in the nave of the Calvary Church here in South Charlotte, seat 6,200, and friends, racing companions, and colleagues are all gathering. It is still about 40 minutes before the service will begin today, and we expect that every seat will be taken for this memorial this celebration of the life of Dale Earnhardt. I was always moved by what the Tennessean writer Larry Woody wrote. He once said, Dale Earnhardt doesn't drive for the dough. He drives for the sheer enjoyment of it. He chases checkered flags for the same reason that beagles chase rabbits. It's his nature. Indeed it was.
We sat down with him in New York on the eve of the Winston Cup banquet this past year, and I asked him if the car owner said, I put all the money in the race car, Dale, I can't afford to pay you, but it's the best car we can put on the track, would you drive it? And he and the other champions hemmed and hawed, and finally he said, I'm here to race, I'm here to win races. And in asking, who in history would you like to have raced? He kind of bowed his head and said, my dad.
Yeah.
And I gave him an elbow and I said, who would have won? He said, my dad.
I always liked the story about him when he was on the Wheaties box. You know, he kind of grew up, Whitlock and Hunter and those guys, creating him as Mr. Guts, Gall, and Grits. That was the big thing. And then it was 97 when he became the first race driver on a cereal box. And he got together with the press one day and he said, guys, you're going to have to cut out all that stuff about grits. Yeah, he was special.
The array of flowers are those that arrived just this morning. Dale Earnhardt Incorporated is filled row after row of flowers in Earnhardt's museum where his prized cars sit, including a 58 Corvette, the year of Teresa's birth, that he bought her for her last birthday, and an 88 Corvette he bought Taylor Nicole to commemorate her birth year. That was a gift her last birthday. The florists in Mooresville and the surrounding area say they have orders for flowers they will not be able to begin to fill for more than 3 weeks. There has been such an outpouring from across the country, and there's an arrangement there from the Roper family who lost their son on the racetrack this past summer. Sunday night on Fox Sports Net, when we had to go on with cheerful news, words came, I knew not from where, but they'd been repeated often, and I really had to dig, in saying that the compass of this sport has lost its true north. Those words rattled in my head, and the words about true north come from a song by one of Nashville's best singer-songwriters and a racer, John Hyatt, who wrote a song called Drive South. Susie Boggess made it a hit, talking about looking for our true north with our head in the clouds and being just a little off course. The compass words I knew came not from where until in the planning of this show, we went up to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, and this is the logo, the centerpiece of which is a compass. But we are here, Ken, today to commemorate Dale's life and to look back on all of the great times that were shared by us and by the fans and by the racers, and most importantly, the fans. Reports of people driving from Ohio to leave tokens and mementos at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated this week. Let's hear from the fans.
I never knew Dale personally or anything, but we feel like that we've really lost a member of our own family. And to us, he'll always be the greatest driver there is, and nobody will ever replace him. I mean, Dale Jr., I hope he carries on, and he'll carry on his name, but there'll never be another Dale Earnhardt.
Dale, he's going to be well missed, and there's a lot of good memories, and Dale was a very good person. If there was a way that he wanted to go, that was the way that he wanted to go.
You just try to say that he's in a better place. You know, he didn't have to get that 8th championship because he's going through the Golden Gates now, you know, and that's a championship in its own. So it's really hard. It's real hard.
Over the years, Earnhardt became quite religious. He always had a proverb that would be attached to the dashboard of his car in any race in which he drove. And Stevie Waltrip was the person responsible for finding him the message each day. In this past Daytona 500, it was Proverbs 18:10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. There was a time at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, where a race was ready to begin. He was strapped in, cinched up, ready to go, and all of a sudden climbed out of his car and walked down pit road looking for Stevie Waltrip. And he said, "I don't have my message for my car today." He was not ready to run until he had some.
Many NASCAR folks are here today. Most anyone you can name from the sport is here or on the way here. Some other celebrities, as Dale was close to baseball in the Atlanta Braves. Rick Sutcliffe, the ex-pitcher, is here. Kix Brooks and Ronnie Dunn, rodeo star Tuff Hedeman, the governor of Alabama, Randy Owen from the group Alabama are among the many folks who have gathered here today. Brooks and Dunn perhaps best epitomized Dale Earnhardt's style as they sang about the cowboy way and about toughness under competition. And they invited Dale to participate in one of their music videos.
Oh, yeah. A celebration of the life of Earnhardt is not complete without some of his music. There will be a vocalist before the service is over today, you may be sure. Yeah.
You could just see the fun he had in doing that video, and Earnhardt made everything a little fun. Story in the paper that one day at the racetrack, he'd parked a little too close to Sterling Marlin's team's car, and to show their appreciation, they went and banged a bunch of wheel weights on one of Earnhardt's wheels, so that he couldn't drive more than 25 miles an hour on the way to the airport after the race without the car shaking all over the place. And Earnhardt told Sterling, he said, someday when you're not at the lake house, I'm going to go down there and just lock up a goat inside and leave it there. I don't know if he ever made good on that promise. It sure was a heck of a threat. I don't think Sterling strayed too far from that house for a while.
You know, years ago he talked about his dad, who was the 1956 National Sportsman Champion of NASCAR. And he said, all my daddy ever did was build cars, race cars, and bird hunt. This was back when he was a young guy just getting started. He said, that's all I want to do. He said, I can't imagine not driving a race car. That's part of what made Earnhardt so special to racing people. Yeah.
He touched on driving that car in the 24 Hours of Daytona. Larry McReynolds and I caught up with him the Monday after. How you doing, what's going on? And all he could talk about was sharing that car with Earnhardt Jr. and the other Chevrolet team drivers, and how much fun it was to come out of the bus stop chicane in the pouring rain in the dead of night, come whistle around that banking at 175 miles an hour. Man, that was fun. And his only frustration was he wanted to stay in the car. They like to change drivers every fuel stop in that race. Dale was used to running 3.5 hours at a stretch. Leave me in, put me back in.
Yeah.
And he couldn't wait to do that again. He and Junior had such fun with that.
He actually stopped Corvette and came over and chatted the day I got to Daytona by the registration building about that and how exciting it was. What a unique experience it was. And he couldn't wait to do it again with Dale Jr. to go down to see, go anywhere. If he could get the weekend off and go 176 miles an hour, that's what he said. In the dark, in the rain, that was a kick. That was Earnhardt.
Well, coming to Daytona this year was one of the baddest cats to ever wear black. Terry Bradshaw, who led the Steelers several times to the Super Bowl. And he came to Daytona with just one request. He wanted to get in a car with Dale Earnhardt.
Hey, you know, got all the stuff. Sure hope Dale lets me drive. I don't think he will. Sure hope he does.
Put your helmet on, let's go. Our chain money. All right, you gotta stay out of this line coming off pit road.
All right. Why am I nervous?
You shouldn't be.
I shouldn't be?
No.
What about turn 3, Dale? What's so special or hard?
All right, this is where I like to race if I'm in line, if there's nobody but, side by side. When you get cars side by side, you're running a high lane. And you got to run up here, and the guys are down on the inside of you. And you get way up here on the high lane like this.
Gee, Merry Christmas, this is not fun.
It is. It's cool, man. Now, we're doing it in race cars. This is a dang old street car. Now, what's bad about this, the racetrack falls out.
What's bad about this?
It falls out money right here, and it's only go wham into the wall. When it falls off like that, it makes your car do that. So you got to be really careful right there, because it takes the air out from under the car. And it loses traction right there for just the instant. You don't want to go down here and catch the apron too quick, because you lose it then, too.
Holy.
Let's pit.
Well,
Let's jump out like you won.
well,
Let's
start
go.
Well,
Hey, we won! Come on, get on the car, we won, yay!
That was a far different Earnhardt than a lot of folks remember in the last 2 or 3 years, and I think it really began around the time of Dale Jr. beginning to succeed.
I think you're right.
Back in '94, after Neil Bonnet was killed, on that same track in that same corner of almost the same injury, he seemed a very quiet person for some time. And he would hide his real feelings by getting in that race car. But after Dale Jr. and Kerry and when Kerry won that ARCA race, he began to become a different person than we'd known before.
That was quite a change in Dale Earnhardt, the man. And I agree, he went into a period of semi-seclusion there after losing his best friend, Neil Bonnet. And the way he dealt with it, a close friend told me yesterday, was he dealt with it by being Dale Earnhardt, by being the public person you know.
The intimidator.
Yes, and keeping those emotions bottled up inside.
And the car was his sanctuary. He could get away, and within a couple of hours of that incident, 7 years and 7 days before this incident, he was in that race car, and that's where he truly felt comfortable.
We are gathered at Calvary Church in South Charlotte. We're in some 20 minutes. The service will begin to celebrate the life of Dale Earnhardt as we review his career both on and off the track. The 6,200 seats are filling with Dale's extended family from NASCAR racing. We've seen the Dale Earnhardt that you know and remember from your TV set and from the grandstands at the racetracks. But who was Dale Earnhardt, the person? Let's show you about his growing up and about the person off the track that he became.
Everyone knew Dale Earnhardt's public image as the Intimidator, the Man in Black, the most feared and respected man in all racing. But privately, Earnhardt was different. Dale was born to Ralph and Martha Earnhardt nearly 50 years ago in the small North Carolina mill town of Kannapolis. Ralph was a racer by trade, among the fiercest of his day. Earnhardt was NASCAR National Sportsman Champ in 1956, and young Dale wanted to follow in his dad's tire tracks, but the road to success was a rough one. Earnhardt dropped out of school early to pursue his racing dream, but it was a struggle, as was his personal life. He had a couple of marriages fail at an early age, and his world was shattered by his father's sudden death from a heart attack in 1973, just as Dale's racing career was beginning to take shape.
I think the only thing or the biggest thing I ever did wrong in my life was probably not going to school, and I quit school early.
So if I ask you, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made?
Quit school early.
That would be?
Yeah. And a lot because of my education, but the biggest thing is what my dad would want me to do is finish school.
As Dale matured behind the wheel, he also grew up off the track. In time, Dale became a devoted father to sons Kerry and Dale Jr., along with daughters Kelly and Taylor Nicole. Since his marriage to Teresa, the two have been nearly inseparable. Dale encouraged his kids to take up the family business.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. is Texas Motor Speedway's second first-time Winston Cup winner.
His involvement in Dale Jr.'s career has been well documented, and he played a large role in Jr.'s quick rise to NASCAR stardom.
And another Earnhardt goes to victory lane. Kerry Earnhardt wins here at Pocono.
Dale helped resurrect oldest son Kerry's driving career. He fielded a car for Kerry on the ARCA Series last year, and no one could deny a father's pride at Pocono when Kerry reached victory lane for the first time. Maybe the most talented of the three older Earnhardt kids was daughter Kelly, who dabbled in racing for a short time, intimidating local drivers on the late model stock car circuit. Away from the track, Earnhardt was an accomplished outdoorsman. Was he most at home in a quiet field or stream, or behind the wheel of a farm tractor, or off hunting with one of his best friends, Neil Bonnet? Despite humble beginnings, Earnhardt was a millionaire many times over. He earned over $40 million in prize money on the racetrack, and sales of his merchandise were said to rival that of Michael Jordan. He owned a successful Winston Cup race team that had seen each of its three drivers in victory lane in the past 9 months. And his name was on one of the most successful car dealerships in the United States. But Dale Earnhardt, the man, will be best remembered as devoted husband, loving father, and loyal friend.
Yesterday was our day, and in victory lane, I just couldn't wait. I won the race, and I was telling everybody about it, and I just couldn't wait until I got that big grab on the neck, a big hug. I just knew any minute Dale was going to run in victory lane and say, "That's what I'm talking about right there." But that wasn't to be. My belief is that in the twinkle of an eye, you're in the presence of the Lord. and that's where I think Dale is.
Car owner Richard Childress said, "Dale was my friend. We hunted and raced together. We laughed and cried together. We were able to work side by side and have the success we had for almost 20 years because we were friends first. I will miss him always. He was the greatest."
In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? And ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Karen, she's a silver sun. You best walk her away and watch it shining. Watch her watch the morning come. A silver tear appearing now. I'm crying, ain't I? I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind. And hey, babe, the sky's on fire. I'm dying, ain't I? I'm gone to Carolina in my mind.
Do you like who you are? Do you like Dale Earnhardt?
I'm pretty happy with him today. He's a pretty straight guy. He don't make mistakes too often. He's a pretty good guy. He stays in line. He does his job. He's going to get rambunctious on the racetrack, but that's about the biggest part of it, He's not going to do anything else.
What are you afraid of?
Oh, my wife. Not really afraid of her. I just don't want to disappoint her.
That's a real good answer.
I don't want to disappoint her.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've never really been afraid of anything in a race car. The fact of fire is there always,
Yeah.
but it's not a fear.
No.
And that's a concern that if there's a safety aspect of racing that I worry about, it's fire.
And might know you'd have to go through somewhat of one.
Well, I did, and with Elliott in the crash, and I got burned a little bit, but that wasn't a major deal. But I really never really been scared or nervous when I got in a race car. Been scared when Tim Richmond was running up across the racetrack like he's going to kill me after we wrecked in Pocono. And after you and I got into it at Richmond, I thought somebody was going to kill me.
Were you scared then?
I thought somebody was going to kill me then. I thought Stevie was going to get me.
I thought Junior was going to get you too.
Yeah, Junior was pretty mad about tearing his lightweight race car up. But
that sucker did fly apart.
But, you go through all that.
But is Dale Earnhardt, other than a race car driver, you said your wife, and I understand that perfectly. What else? Is there anything away from a racetrack? What are you afraid of?
I don't know that there's really anything that I'm afraid of other than just that. Seems like I want everybody to be happy. I don't want things to come up tomorrow and somebody's unhappy.
Yeah.
My kids.
Well, you're in the wrong business, but.
Well, I know I'm talking about my kids. I'm talking about, you want all you people that works for you to be happy. I'm probably not the best boss there ever was because
you think you're demanding?
Too good-hearted in a lot of ways, and I let people run things a little bit too much. Sometimes when I put my foot down, so no, this is, we've got to stay in line here. We've got to do this. But the guys I just want everybody to be happy.
How do you see yourself? How do you feel about Dale Earnhardt?
A lot better.
I've known you
a lot
for
better
so long.
today than I did several years ago, because of family, because of my life, because I think I'm a better person than I used to be. I got a great wife, a great family, proud of my kids, all of them, I've really got it all right now. I'm racing and enjoying it. I win. I'm competitive, but my family, everything's great there. And then I have some good race teams too. My kids winning races. Carrie, my oldest son's there with us, so. Got grandkids. I'm having a good time. I got it all right now, Darrell. I got it all.
No, you really do.
I'm a lucky man. I have it all. The Lord's looked after us, I reckon. My aunt and uncle made me go to Sunday school when my daddy was racing and working, and I went to Sunday school with my aunt, and I reckon that helped a lot when I was a kid.
That teaches us all a lot of values.
Got me on the straight path, I reckon.
Last year, reacting to an on-track death, Earnhardt, driving down the road with a close associate, told him, "If this ever happens to me, you guys better be in the street dancing and partying, because I had a good life, and I'm going to challenge you to keep carrying on."
Yeah, one of the traditions of racing, which I think is greatly misunderstood, is the business of when a comrade falls, one goes forward, one goes on. And as long as I know, over 50 years that I've been in this game, that's what I've always known and recognized, that if a comrade falls, you pick yourself up and you perform at the highest level at which you can in the very next event, and that is the finest tribute you can pay to the comrade who has fallen. I've always thought that was part of the American way. It's a serious game, and they play it in a serious manner. This is not a child or adolescent game. It's always been a serious game. And Earnhardt knew that, and it registered with him. Wilt Browning once wrote about Earnhardt. He said, if you want drama, you get Earnhardt. And if you want 500 miles on the ragged edge, you get Earnhardt. If you want reckless abandon, you get Earnhardt. I think Tom Wolfe may have been wrong about who was the last American hero. He claimed it as Junior Johnson in that wonderful article he wrote. But I think a lot of people today are going to respond to what has happened this past week in Daytona, that this is a true American hero.
I would agree. Dale stayed true to character. Money, fame, and success never changed him to the people who knew him longest. His vehicle of choice remained a pickup truck. That's just who he was.
Yeah. I always got a kick out of the fact of who his heroes were. I mean, who he liked today. You know, he liked his dad and the way his dad raced, but he thought Joe Montana was hot stuff, and he loved John McEnroe. Now, he was not a big tennis guy, but McEnroe was one of the people. Somebody asked him one time about that. He said, John McEnroe. Of course, John McEnroe has a bit of an attitude as well, and that's what the Intimidator showed to a lot of people, and they did not get, most people did not get that opportunity to see the side of this guy, spending so much time with people, invalids, older people. He made it a big point to do that. A lot of his time was spent. And he wanted no credit for it, and he wanted no photos taken. He didn't want any publicity about it. He simply did it because he thought he should, because those people cared about it.
We'll probably hear in coming months of all the people that he helped around the Central Carolinas, folks that will come forward and say, Dale and I did this together, or Dale was involved in this with me. He liked all forms of racing. He'd sit in his motor coach on early Sunday mornings and catch the live feed of Formula One from Europe. He was all up to date on who drove what car and why, and the moves that drivers had made in the most recent races. And he was an avid student of the sport. But then he'd climb out of that motorhome, put on those sunglasses, and start swaggering toward that garage area, and he'd be Dale Earnhardt. Quite a transformation, and quite a public persona.
I think one of the great stories about Earnhardt will always be the crash at Talladega, when he had that awful incident, and he'd broken his sternum, and he'd broken his collarbone, and he'd broken some ribs, and he banged up his leg. And he walked away, as you saw in some footage that we presented earlier. And at the very next race, Watkins Glen, there he was. And there was a backup driver ready to take over the number 3, and he thought he wanted to go out and practice the car. And he went out and practiced the car. And then he went out, decided he'd give it a chance at qualifying, and he qualified it on the pole. And then it got down to race time, and he was going to drive to the first caution or the first stop for fuel and tires. And he drove the race and finished 6th with all of those injuries and all of that pain. And he said, it was sort of a dull ache in my shoulder, and it really hurt in my chest. And he said the first and second hour were like that, and then the third hour, I sort of got tired. That was Earnhardt.
We're drawing near to the time of the service here at Calvary Church in South Charlotte. It is to be a very simple service and remembrance.
I believe the family is arriving now. He was asked once about what his motto would be. He said, work hard and be honest. Willpower and determination can see you through. Can see you through most things. And oh yes, enjoy your family.
We have one last piece we'd like to share with you before the service begins that Pam Serbaugh edited, a very loving piece on Dale Earnhardt.
Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500. Every man on every crew has come out to the edge of pit lane to congratulate the man who has dominated everything there is to win in this sport.
Spun that 95 car out and caused a big mess, and then he come up there and tried to spin me out twice. I didn't take it.
Get in touch if the wind blows in your face. I guess it's been too much fun. But we've shared and we've won. And yes, the best is yet to come. Goodbye, goodbye, till I see you again. Goodbye, goodbye, I'll love and I'll miss you till then. That one word hurts so bad when you lose a friend you've had, but you keep the faith and you pray to return. Goodbye, goodbye, I'll love and I'll miss you till then.
Thank you, Randy. We're so blessed to have your talent and your spirit with us today. I am thankful to be a part of this homegoing celebration memorial for Dale Earnhardt. As his hometown pastor, St. Mark's feels that we've lost a church member and a very special friend. Our prayers and our concerns go out to everyone who knew and loved Dale. At this time, let us bow our hearts and our minds and pray together the prayer that our Lord Jesus Christ taught his disciples. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Our selected scripture text for the service today is a reading from the 11th chapter of St. John. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary sat in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, he who is coming into the world." May we be blessed by the reading of God's holy word on this day.
Thank you, Pastor Cozart, and on behalf of the family, thank you all for coming. Particularly want to thank the staff of Calvary Church for opening their doors and allowing us and working so selflessly to make us comfortable here today. So to Pastor Wagner and the staff, thank you for that. I don't know about you, but in the last couple of days, I've been searching for a place to anchor my hope. When times like this come, and they come for all of us, we look to a place to anchor for stability. We want to celebrate, remember, and think about the man that we love. I want to encourage you to do 3 things in the coming days: to tell those stories, and everybody's got a Dale Earnhardt story who's sitting in here, and to laugh and to remember the emotion that goes with those stories, to listen to each other as you tell those stories, and to pray. Pray alone and pray with each other. I think Dale would be happy that we would be laughing and telling stories with each other. But where do we go from here? I mean, each of us, we don't like thinking about this, but what do we do, those who are here today? How do we anchor to something? An author has said it better than I can say it. Dave Haney, who writes in his book, A Living Hope, says that to imagine that there is no such thing as absolute truth is essentially a corruption of the hope that we have in Christ. When Jesus said in John 14:6, He is the way, the truth, and the life, He gave a fairly strong indication to us that there are absolutes in the world. Absolutes, and that He is the standard of those absolutes. No wonder sometimes we, as people of faith, suffer from the symptoms of chronic loss of hope. And listen to what he says. Where our hope is anchored in the quicksand of relativism, and what relativism is just where you say truth is relative. It's of no one origin. Where the hope of us is anchored in the quicksand of this non-absolute. I love what he says here. It has the sustaining power of warm jello. I hope you will find that you can anchor into a deeper hope as you look into this text that Pastor Cozart has read today and as we reflect on today. But I want you to think for just a moment about the first time you met Dale Earnhardt. You remember the first time you met Dale? I remember the first time I met Dale. I have the opportunity to be a chaplain with motor racing outreach, and I go from track to track, and I'm kind of a pastor and a chaplain that visits with the men who are not only on the teams but who drive these race cars. And I remember that I was very young in this ministry, about 6 months going along. And Lonnie Klaus, who is our youth pastor, some of you sitting here know Lonnie, wanted to take the kids on a camping trip in Pocono. And we were at this beautiful place, and we were going to go to the Pocono Mountains and take the kids, and Taylor wanted to go on this camping trip, or I think she did anyway. And Lonnie came to me and he said, and Lonnie's from New Hampshire, we'll forgive him for that. But Lonnie said, yo dude, he said, I need you to take this permission slip to Big E and get him to sign it because Taylor wants to go on this camping trip. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll be glad to do that. So as I started walking toward the garage, I knew that meant that for the first time I was going to have to be in the presence of Dale. And so as I thought about that a minute, I said, I've developed a pretty good relationship with Richard Childress's PR guy, JR. And I don't know what JR's real name is. JR is JR, and those of you that know him as JR. So I said, I'll do an end run around this, and I will give the permission slip to JR. I'll have JR take the permission slip to Dale. It'll all be handled. I'll get the permission slip, and we can go on our way. So I gave it to JR. 20 minutes later, I came back, and JR's looking at me with the permission slip, and it doesn't have a signature on it. And he looked at me and said, he wants to see you a few minutes. He wants to see me. JR, would you take me to him? Yeah, come on. So we got up on the transporter that I'd never been on before, and we walked these few feet to the back cubbyhole that's a lounge, and we are walking down what seems like miles into this dark place into the back. And I said, what kind of mood what's he doing? And JR said, he's having lunch. And I said, oh, great, he's killed a bear this morning, and he's sitting in the back of this thing eating a bear with his bare hands, and I'm going to be dessert because I want to take his daughter on a camping trip. So as we get to the back, JR introduces me. I didn't find a man eating a bear. I didn't see deer heads around the wall. I saw a man eating an orange, and in a very warm demeanor, welcomed me into his presence. I didn't come into the presence of a racing icon or an intimidating figure. I came into the presence of a dad, a father, who was concerned about his daughter, as I know he's concerned about all his children and his grandchildren. And he wanted to ask me for just the next few moments what our intentions were with Taylor going on to this camping trip, when we would be back. And it's interesting, I walked out of there getting a lesson in parenthood. I told Dale, I said, Dale, if you're concerned about this, I certainly understand, because I've got 2 boys and I don't want them to cross the street. And I connected with him there. He said, yeah. He said, that's right. He said, that's right. He said, they grow up fast. He said, they grow up fast, and you need to spend as much time with them as you can. I walked away from there that day, welcomed into the presence of a father. And that's what I want you to think about today. Because ultimately that's what, on a physical level, we can relate to on a spiritual level. The scripture that Pastor Cozart just read talks about Jesus coming into a situation with a family that he loved. These were not just casual acquaintances who had a need. These were people that Jesus was intimately involved with. He was their friend. And Jesus comes into this situation emotionally, and he's looking at the disciples, and he's saying, Lazarus is dead. He's already gone, and I'm glad that I wasn't there. And I'm thinking, wait just a minute. If Jesus could have been there, he would have healed him and he would not have died. Why would Jesus be excited that his friend Lazarus was gone? I stand by the car of all you guys as I've stood with Dale and Teresa before, and we always ask, God, protect these men as they get in this race car. Protect these teams as they're on pit road, please, and don't let anything happen to them today. Give them a safe race. And most of the time, God grants that request, and we rejoice as we go home, but sometimes he doesn't. And Jesus would look at us and say, I'm glad I wasn't there. Why in the world would he choose to miss intervening in these situations of our lives? He did it for the disciples, I think the same reason he does it with us today, so that we will see and experience his greater glory. Do you catch that? Jesus moves through the passage, and as he greets and meets Martha and the sisters who are grieving over the situation, he helps them answer the question of life that every one of us sitting here today and watching today are asking. And the question you and I are asking today is, I want to know if death is the most powerful force in the universe. I can tell you, as we read from the beginning, if death is the most powerful force in the universe and there are no absolutes for you and I to anchor our faith in, then we're in trouble. We're in deathly grave trouble. But Jesus comes along in that passage, and he looks at the sister and he says, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. Do you hear that word? Do you hear those words? Will you let that sink in today? Because if that's an absolute truth of which standards flow from, then you and I have a hope that's more sustaining than warm jello. We have the bedrock of life for today and forevermore. That's what I want you to see today. Interesting, isn't it? Martha says, yes, Lord, I know that my brother will rise in the resurrection at the last day. And yes, Lord, I understand that, but Jesus is taking her to a more immediate act of faith. I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. Later on in the passage, in verse 40, we have these words. Didn't I tell you that you will see God's glory if you believe? So they rolled the stone aside, and Jesus looked up to heaven and said, Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so they will believe that you sent me. Notice that. Then Jesus shouted, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus came out, bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth, and Jesus told him at this resurrection moment, he told the people around him, because he was bound in grave clothes, he says, unwrap him and let him go. Verse 45 says, many of the people who were with Mary believed in Jesus when they saw this happen. Will you believe in absolutes with me today? Because the absolute truth is that Christ has provided a way for all of us. When I walked that day into the presence of greatness, I don't have to tell you Dale Earnhardt was great. I went with a person and found a father. You see the connection here? I don't want to liken, I told JR, I said, JR, I don't want to liken you to Jesus. I'm not out to try to compare you with him. I'm not up here today to say that Dale Earnhardt was God. That's not it at all. But I'm saying that you and I will one day be ushered into the presence of a very intimidating force. And we have the privilege, based on this passage today, to have somebody go with us. Jesus says, I'll take you there. Jesus is not just a public relations manager. He is the Savior of the world, and he can escort you into the presence of greatness to where you will feel no fear, but you will find rest for your soul and the presence of a dad. That's what you can trust. That's where you can hope. There's a Savior that will take you there. I wonder if you know him. Father God, thank you so very much for just the meditation of your word and the hope that we find in you. Thank you so very much just for loving this family in the way that I've seen you move in their midst over the last couple days. What a precious privilege it is to sit here in a house of worship and to remember your goodness to a man that we love. And we thank you because we know that our hope does not lie in something that's empty, but in something that can save our souls. Be with us this day, we ask, for Christ's sake. Amen.
I was walking home from school on a cold winter day. Took a shortcut through the woods, and I lost my way. It was getting late, and I was scared and alone. But then a kind old man took my hand and led me home. Now Mama couldn't see him, oh, but he was standing there. And I knew in my heart he was the answer to my prayer. Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hour to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with the light of love. troubled times and had me down on my knees. There's always been someone to come along and comfort me. A kind word from a stranger to lend a helping hand, a phone call from a friend just to say I understand. Ain't it kind of funny at the dark end of the road that someone lights the way with just a single ray of hope? Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with a light of love. They wear so many faces, show up in the strangest places to grace us with their mercies in our time of need. Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with a light of love, to guide us with a light of love.
Now may the grace of Christ our Savior and the love of God our Father and the fellowship of the Spirit be with us today and forevermore. Amen.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like found. Oh, I was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home.
Dale Earnhardt's NASCAR family file out of the Calvary Church and prepare to go on to Rockingham, where the series will race this weekend. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and the other Earnhardt Incorporated cars will race. Richard Childress Racing will be there to compete. And many people in the sport have taken guidance from the answer to the question that we all ask: what would Dale do? And we're guided by the events of February 1994, when Dale lost best friend Neil Bonnet on the racetrack in a practice crash at Daytona. Earnhardt was stoic, said little, kept feelings to himself inside, and climbed back into the car the next day and raced. And everyone in this sport today is mindful of that and guided by it. So we will go on to Rockingham, not because we truly wish to, but because we wish to honor the memory of one of the sport's great champions in a fashion in which he honored his late friend.
Bill France Jr. said that Dale Earnhardt Jr. was NASCAR's greatest driver. I don't think many are going to deny that. He was something. And so what do all of the rest of us do now that cared about him and cared about this sport? Well, I would suggest there are three things that we need to remember. We need to remember Dale Earnhardt in our hearts. The excitement that he created, the emotion that he stirred, his forthrightness, his directness, those eyes that at one moment could be the eyes of an avenging angel, and it would seem as if in the next moment they could be the eyes of gentleness. They always had that little twinkle and glimmer, other than when he was really serious about being the intimidator. So we need to remember Dale Earnhardt. And we need to remember his family. We need to remember Teresa, who was his pillar, his strength. And she has been the same for all of us since his demise this past Sunday. And we need to remember Carrie and Kelly and Taylor Nicole and Dale Jr. as they go forward and support them in any way we can. And we need to remember the extended family. Richard Childress and all those folks that work on those cars. No one ever worked for Dale Earnhardt or for Richard Childress. They worked with them, and they made that a big point. Richard Childress and Dale Earnhardt both came out of the class of hard knocks, came up the tough way, didn't have two pennies to rub together, but they built race cars, and if they won, they ate, and if they didn't, they tried to find a way to get some tires and go on to the next event. And no one will ever deny either of them what they have been able to earn in motorsports, the sport that both of them love so much. And we must remember that extended family as well as the Earnhardt family. And finally, we must remember when something like this happens and stuns and staggers us, that there is a power greater than ourselves, something that Dale Earnhardt had come to accept in these last years.
When Richard Petty retired, they were asked if his number 43 would leave the track with him. And Richard said, "It's a number. It's been with Petty Enterprises as long as I've been. It'll continue to be there. It'll continue to be carried on our cars, and we hope that when people see that number 43, that they fondly remember Richard Petty." This may turn out to be such an instance. We won't see a number 3 on track this weekend, but it will certainly be right there in our hearts.
There's been some comment in this past week about Sterling Marlin, and Michael Waltrip rose to his defense the other day, and I think it's only fair that we should mention that here as we come to conclusion and we have an extra moment or two. This was a racing incident, and I think everyone in the racing fraternity totally understands that. Sometimes it's hard to grasp, but again, you have to go back to Richard Petty. When his grandson Adam lost his life up in New Hampshire 10 months ago, someone a couple of weeks later said, "Well, what have you discovered? What are you learning about the thing?" And Richard said, "Stop." He said, "We are not interested in the past. We have lost Adam, and now we must go on." And he dropped all of that baggage. And he did go on, and that family has gone on, and Kyle raced with his son's number and finished 16th. And again, I think we all must go on, and there's no pointing fingers. When you get 3 guys, great racers, running 180 miles an hour into turn 3 at Daytona, things do happen. And such they did this past weekend. And I hope that everyone can find peace in their hearts about this incident that took the life of Dale.
We're going to lead you back to another piece of tape now, following which we're going to be joined here at the Calvary Church in Charlotte by a very special guest.
Everyone knew Dale Earnhardt's public image as the Intimidator, the Man in Black, the most feared and respected man in all racing. But privately, Earnhardt was different. Dale was born to Ralph and Martha Earnhardt nearly 50 years ago in the small North Carolina mill town of Kannapolis. Ralph was a racer by trade, among the fiercest of his day. Earnhardt was NASCAR National Sportsman Champ in 1956, and young Dale wanted to follow in his dad's tire tracks, but the road to success was a rough one. Earnhardt dropped out of school early to pursue his racing dream, but it was a struggle, as was his personal life. He had a couple of marriages fail at an early age, and his world was shattered by his father's sudden death from a heart attack in 1973, just as Dale's racing career was beginning to take shape.
I think the only thing or the biggest thing I ever did wrong in my life was probably not go to school. And I quit school early.
So if I ask you, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made?
Quit school early.
That would be?
Yeah. And a lot because of my education, but the biggest thing is what my dad would have wanted me to do is finish school.
As Dale matured behind the wheel, he also grew up off the track. In time, Dale became a devoted father to sons Kerry and Dale Jr., along with daughters Kelly and Taylor Nicole. Since his marriage to Teresa, the two have been nearly inseparable. Dale encouraged his kids to take up the family business.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. is Texas Motor Speedway's second first-time Winston Cup winner.
His involvement in Dale Jr.'s career has been well documented, and he played a large role in Jr.'s quick rise to NASCAR stardom.
And another Earnhardt goes to victory lane. Kerry Earnhardt wins here at Pocono.
Dale helped resurrect oldest son Kerry's driving career. He fielded a car for Kerry on the ARCA Series last year, and no one could deny a father's pride at Pocono when Kerry reached victory lane for the first time. Maybe the most talented of the 3 older Earnhardt kids was daughter Kelly, who dabbled in racing for a short time, intimidating local drivers on the late model stock car circuit. Away from the track, Earnhardt was an accomplished outdoorsman. Was he most at home in a quiet field, or stream, or behind the wheel of a farm tractor, or off hunting with one of his best friends, Neil Bonner. Despite humble beginnings, Earnhardt was a millionaire many times over. He earned over $40 million in prize money on the racetrack, and sales of his merchandise were said to rival that of Michael Jordan. He owned a successful Winston Cup race team that had seen each of its 3 drivers in victory lane in the past 9 months. And his name was on one of the most successful car dealerships in the United States. But Dale Earnhardt, the man, will be best remembered as devoted husband, loving father, and loyal friend.
Yesterday was our day, and in victory lane, I just couldn't wait. I won the race, and I was telling everybody about it, and I just couldn't wait until I got that big grab on the neck, the big hug. I just knew any minute Dale was going to run in victory lane and say, "That's what I'm talking about right there." But that wasn't to be. My belief is that in the twinkle of an eye, you're in the presence of the Lord, and that's where I think Dale is.
Coroner Richard Childress said, "Dale was my friend. We hunted and raced together. We laughed and cried together. We were able to work side by side and have the success we had for almost 20 years because we were friends first. I will miss him always. He was the greatest."
In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? And ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Karen, she's a silver sun. You best walk her away and watch it shining. Watch her watch the morning come. A silver tear appearing now. I'm crying, ain't I? I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind. And hey, babe, the sky's on fire. I'm dying, ain't I? I'm gone to Carolina in my mind.
Do you like who you are? Do you like Dale Earnhardt?
I'm pretty happy with him today. He's a pretty straight guy. He don't make mistakes too often. He's a pretty good guy. He stays in line. He does his job. He's going to get rambunctious on the racetrack, but that's about the biggest part of it, He's not going to do anything else.
What are you afraid of?
Oh, my wife. Not really afraid of her. I just don't want to disappoint her.
That's a real good answer.
I don't want to disappoint her.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've never really been afraid of anything in a race car. The fact of fire is there always,
Yeah.
but it's not a fear.
No.
And that's a concern that if there's a safety aspect of racing that I worry about, it's fire.
And might know you'd have to go through somewhat of one.
Well, I did, and with Elliott in the crash, and I got burned a little bit, but that wasn't a major deal. But I really never really been scared or nervous when I got in a race car. Been scared when Tim Richmond was running up across the racetrack like he's going to kill me after we wrecked in Pocono. And after you and I got into it at Richmond, I thought somebody was going to kill me.
Were you scared then?
I thought somebody was going to kill me then. I thought Stevie was going to get me.
I thought Junior was going to get you too.
Yeah, Junior was pretty mad about tearing his lightweight race car up. But
that sucker did fly apart.
But, you go through all that.
But is Dale Earnhardt, other than a race car driver, you said your wife, and I understand that perfectly. What else? Is there anything away from a racetrack? What are you afraid of?
No, I don't know that there's really anything that I'm afraid of other than just that. Seems like I want everybody to be happy. I don't want things to come up tomorrow and somebody's unhappy.
Yeah.
my kids.
Well, you're in the wrong business, but.
Well, I know I'm talking about my kids.
You got all
I'm talking about, you want all your people that works for you to be happy. I'm probably not the best boss there ever was, because I'm
you think you're demanding?
Too good-hearted in a lot of ways, and I let people run things a little bit too much sometimes when I should put my foot down. So, no, this is, we got to stay in line here. We got to do this. But the guys I just want everybody to be happy.
How do you see yourself? How do you feel about Dale Earnhardt?
A lot better.
I've known you
a lot
for
better
so long.
today than I did several years ago, because of family, because of my life, because I think I'm a better person than I used to be. I got a great wife, a great family, proud of my kids, all of them, and I've really got it all right now. I'm racing and enjoying it. I win. I'm competitive, but my family, everything's great there. And then I have some good race teams too. My kids winning races. Carrie, my oldest son's there with us, so got grandkids. I mean, I'm having a good time. I got it all right now, Darrell. I got it all.
No, you really do.
I'm a lucky man. I have it all. I mean, the Lord's looked after us, I reckon. My aunt and uncle made me go to Sunday school when my daddy was racing and working, and I went to Sunday school with my aunt, and I reckon that helped a lot when I was a kid.
That teaches us all a lot of values.
Got me on the straight path, I reckon.
We're gathered at the Calvary Church in South Charlotte, celebrating the life of one of NASCAR's great champions, Dale Earnhardt. Welcome back. I'm Mike Joy alongside Ken Squire, and we're joined by the chairman and CEO of NASCAR and International Speedway Corporation, Bill France Jr.
Bill, about 10 seconds away from maybe the greatest Daytona 500 that we've seen in 43 years, and then this. Stunning, staggering, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it also, I kind of apologized to him the other day, not that I had any, could have changed things, but Michael Waltrip, he's been trying so long, and a little bit on Dale Earnhardt. I asked him this past February in Daytona. I had dinner one night, and I said, is Michael the right guy for that car? He said, absolutely. He said, he's going to win races in that car.
Yeah, Jeff Hammond picked him to win that race, and by George, he did it. And he's such a good spokesman and such a good representative. But how about you? Seems to me that among all the people that race in NASCAR, that Earnhardt had become one of the closest to you.
He had. And I got to know him really when he and Jeff Bodine made a kind of this trip to Daytona.
It was a trip to the woodshed, wasn't it?
Well, I don't like to. I use that term for big boys,
right.
But we had to put the fire out a little bit. They were kind of banging on each other from I guess about 2-3 weeks up here in Charlotte. So I had them come down with their car owners, and I've reminded them that the sport is going to go on, whether or not they're part of it or not. It was going on before they were a part of it, and will go on afterwards, and that's the way it should be. Going to go on after I'm gone, and after the two of y'all are gone. So that's the way life is, and I think Dale accepted that at that time. It wasn't just the next race was all as important. And then we'd wind up fishing from time to time down in the Bahamas. He got up early in the morning, and so did I. It's like we'd be sitting on the dock about 4:30 in the morning, shooting the breeze about motorsports, about where it was going, and about what needed to happen, what the obligations to from the competitors are to the sport and to the fans. And as the sport has grown in importance, and this certainly Dale's funeral and the associated media coverage with that it has shown that there's motorsports has received more coverage over this. It's not something that we want, but shows what kind of a hero that NASCAR drivers have become to the American public and the worldwide community, for that matter. So, but you never asked Dale to do anything to promote the sport. I never did. that he didn't respond, in a heartbeat. And there are others too that do that. And one of my jobs, and Mike Helton's job now, is to try and make sure that that we bring the new drivers along and let them appreciate the responsibility that they have. People don't sit up in the grandstand and cheer for them for nothing. They want to see a good race. They also want to see them off the racetrack being a good spokesman for the sport, and they in turn support their sponsors and everything else.
You went off on these fishing trips together, and do I understand that you'd have contests? In the middle of the contest, you or he would go and change the rules and kind of play with one another back and forth like that?
Well, I'd whip him every time and that, because I had a lot more experience in changing rules.
Changing rules, right.
He talked in this piece that we just saw before you joined us about fire. And in 1964, when Fireball Roberts was lost, that was a time when the sport did make some major changes, and it was the time of Sachs and McDonald up at Indianapolis. Do you see that this may be a period of change again in NASCAR?
I'm not sure at this stage in the game. There's certainly a lot of focus on his accident and what else was involved in it. And it's a little premature, I think, for me to start speculating. But NASCAR's always had a focus on safety. We get a little bit criticized from time to time, and people got to remember that it's usually over the drivers. And we sympathize totally, and losing any driver is bad enough. But there's somebody else sitting there too that's equally as important and maybe more important. And that's the race fan, John Q. Public. And so whatever we do, i.e. softballs or anything else, has got to also take that into consideration. Got to take in consideration how quick can you get the facility going again, because you people aren't going to stay around there till midnight every night waiting on us to get a race over with.
Well, some of us would.
Well, there's a lot more than just meets the eye,
yeah.
And you got to sit back and take a look at it. So, that's where I need to leave that today, as of today, anyway.
You've got some good people now with Mike Helton and those folks that are looking after this. It would seem to me that when you stepped up or did your lateral here, that the people you put in place seem to share that concern.
Oh, I think so. I think, and we've got a lot more people working today than we ever had 5 or 6 years ago. And the spotlight shines on us a lot brighter too. So we got to have enough people to put the shield up in front of our eyes.
Bill, how hard will it be to go to Rockingham this week?
Well, you'll be going there with mixed emotions. I'm sure it'll be pretty dramatic without Dale. But then again, it would be, if we didn't run Rockingham, Vegas would be next. And it'd be the same thing there for the first race. So I think Rockingham the show has to go on. And it'll be tough, but we're going to have an appreciation for him there.
Has anything ever hit you harder?
Yeah, not in a long time. I was real close to Fireball. You mentioned him earlier, Fireball Roberts and Joe Weatherly. Yeah. And as a rule, I don't get that close to the drivers for this very reason. Now and then, some of them just jump out and grab you, and Earnhardt was one of those. And I don't make any apology for it either. I think my press statement down in Daytona after the accident really said it all. He was
Bill, in the history of this sport, is there anybody that has moved the sport along further from the driver's seat than Dale?
Well, I think you got to put Richard Petty in there with Dale.
Of course.
As our two leading spokesmen in the last bit. Richard's been off the air because as a car owner, he's not as visible like Dale was. But Dale's ability the IROC race, which people will see, I guess, in a week or so. They got showing him going through the grass.
Yeah.
You know, and he did it out here at Charlotte a few years ago. And he's from a pure raw talent. I say he's the best we ever had. Everyone others real good. Curtis Turner was real good. And Roy Hall, Lloyd C. back before the war when I was just a little shaver.
Bill France Jr., thanks for joining us, the chairman of NASCAR, on this solemn day.
Okay, thank you.
We will head to Rockingham with heavy hearts, but we will head there, and we will continue on this great sport. And while no one among us truly wants to go there, we will go there to share our memories and our smiles, remembering Dale, and somewhat disbelieving that he's gone.
Indeed. And that's what people have done in this particular hard sport for so many years. It is the sport for those that climb the great mountains, try those endless deserts, and sometimes it gets really rough, as it did this past weekend. And that's why victory is so precious to those who continue.
Thank you for joining us.
And Earnhardt loses it, goes on the grass, comes back, and Elliott goes inside. And Earnhardt still got the lead. Incredible.
Checkered flag. Dale Earnhardt finally is a champion of the Daytona